Mike Norvell's beginning to his Florida State tenure was a rocky one. There are plenty of things that make people think that he might be gone before this second season even started. And now he's kind of steadied everything out. He's kind of leveled out the roller coaster, if you will, the volatility in the program. And now he has a team full of potential, one that's going to be really fun to watch. And I think that you're looking at a guy who is got a team that could compete in the ACC. Maybe not win it all, but you're looking at a team with a ton of talent, one that's looking to take a step forward, that's hungry to take a step forward, and I wouldn't necessarily count them out. Jamie Robinson is going to be a safety this year, and he gives that Florida State defense one of the best safeties in college football. He did a little bit of everything, playing at nickelback last year, playing at safety, and that's going to be something, experience that's going to help him in the long run, and help him in the future as well. And this is a defense that's going to have to take a step forward. They're going to play some talented offenses, and if the secondary is up to the task, it's going to slow things down for the opposition and keep Florida State in games. Jordan Travis might not be number 2 in terms of talent, but he is the second most important player on this team. You could argue that he's the most important player because if he doesn't play well, the offense doesn't score, and it doesn't really matter what the defense does. Travis is one of the fastest quarterbacks in the entire country, and if he's able to take a step forward as a passer, his rushing abilities take a whole new meaning this year. Completed almost 63% of his passes, through 15 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, and honestly, a lot of times last year, his speed was what kept opposing teams from sacking him more. And then you look at the Clemson game, for example, that's one of the best defensive lines maybe we've ever seen in college football. He was taken down quite a bit. However, there are many more plays that if he is not as fast as he is, Clemson is probably getting 20 sacks. Now, if he, the reports are that he is taking a step forward as a passer, he's getting better, and that's going to help an offense because Mike Norvell is a great offensive mind. If he's brought in some talent that can help this offense, and a guy like Jordan Travis could be his latest and greatest quarterback that he's coached. Akeem Dent is going to join Jamie Robinson in the secondary at safety, and man, he is fun. He is not afraid to throw his weight around. He is not afraid to make a big hit, and that's going to be huge for the defense. Sometimes you're going to need to send a message, whether that's through a big hit or just a big play. Akeem Dent is going to be a guy that's going to step up and do that for them. This secondary is talented. They have the safeties in place. The cornerbacks just need to do their part. But the safeties are going to be a huge part of this defense, a huge veteran presence, a good leadership group that can take a step forward and be what they need them to be. Robert Cooper is one of the players we'll talk about on the interior defensive line. That's going to be a group that has to step up and even more. Last year they were solid. There were a lot of plays that we saw where they're able to use their power and throw their weight around, where they're opening things up for the guys behind them. And that also helps the secondary in terms of covering, because when you only have to cover for 2 seconds versus 5, life's pretty easy. I mean, there's a lot of people that can cover for 2 seconds. And if your defensive line is making life difficult for the opposing offense, especially the quarterback, your secondary is going to look a lot better. And if they're opening things up in terms of commanding double teams or moving guys out of gaps and creating better vision for the guys behind them, you don't really need to worry about much. Tatum Bethune is a guy who's really come on strong for Florida State. There's been many reports saying how much they like him and how he's pretty much taken a starting spot at linebacker already. Had 108 tackles last year, 5.5 tackles for loss. Does a little bit of everything for this defense, and I think that's probably why he's done so well with Florida State already, is he's capable of doing everything. You need him to obviously tackle within the trenches. He can do that, but he also get out in space and cover. And that's something that this defense is going to need. The linebackers need somebody to step up, and it seems like Tatum Bethune is going to be that guy. One receiver that's returning this year, Ontario Wilson, and this offense needs some receivers to step up. You need someone to be able to give Jordan Travis that go-to receiver or that explosive threat that can take a top off defense. And maybe Wilson can be that guy. We saw last year, his average showed that he can be an explosive playmaker. It just comes down to if he can do that on a consistent basis. Now, in Norvell's system, we've seen players who maybe aren't the biggest. And you look at like Anthony Miller. Anthony Miller was not the biggest wide receiver. You're not going to get guys who were huge and able to do that. You're going to find explosiveness that's going to help them more, even if they don't have the biggest size. So Ontario Wilson is a guy who could be an explosive playmaker, use his speed rather than his natural size to get open. And if he does, and he's able to create stress on the defense, Jordan Travis is going to have a big year. Winston Wright comes in from West Virginia to join Wilson in the wide receiver group. There's quite a few players we could have put here, but it feels like these are the top two options for Travis. Winston Wright might be more of that a possession receiver, but we saw at West Virginia he's a guy who could step up and be that guy too. So one of these guys just needs to step up. You need to find someone that's going to be the reliable player when you need to pick up some yards, and also someone that can take the top off defense, because if you don't have a deep threat, it doesn't matter what you do under the middle. Now, you can scheme guys open and whatnot, but it's going to help you a lot more to have someone take the top off the defense. And whether that's Wright or Wilson, it doesn't matter. As long as one of them does it, it's going to open things up for everybody else. Losing Jermaine Johnson was always going to hurt. However, Mike Norvell got Jared Verse from Albany, and he's already making a huge impact in his limited time at Florida State. Now, people don't expect him to be Jermaine Johnson. He's just a different defensive end, but Jared Verse is already fitting what everybody expects of him and really meeting expectations from a fan base that is expecting a defensive line to be a strength of this defense. We talked about Robert Cooper. We're going to talk about another player behind or that's going to be next to him, but Jared Verse might be the guy that steps up the most. He's kind of a relative unknown coming from an FCS program. Obviously everybody knew him in the transfer portal, but what can he do at Florida State? What can he do at the FBS level? Just because he's a highly recruited transfer or highly coveted transfer doesn't guarantee he's going to be successful. But every report that I've heard so far says that he is the man and he is big time. That other guy we were talking about, Fabien LaValle, he'll be lined up next to probably both Verse and Robert Cooper. That interior defensive line, at least at the starting positions, is going to be good. And it just comes down really to depth behind them, because if they don't have depth, it doesn't matter how good they are, because they probably aren't going to play every down. And maybe they do, but I don't know how the conditioning is there. But this is a group that can be exciting, especially the interior. Cooper and LaValle, if they can be more productive than they were last year, the defense is going to take a step forward. That's going to help the offense as well. If you look at what Norvell did in the offseason, it was hammering the transfer portal as much as possible. Taking Lamar transfer, Bless Harris, is going to help the offensive line improve immensely. You're looking at a team that could be even better offensively if multiple positions take a step forward. Again, this is a group that has talent. It just comes down to, can they put it all together? Can they be better on the field? And a guy like Bless Harris could add great value to an offensive line that has the talent and some experience. And it just comes down to, again, production and consistency. This team is very intriguing as a sleeper team in the ACC, a very underrated group of players that we just listed. And if they're able to take steps forward, all of them, then this is the team that's going to surprise people. They're going to surprise the ACC. Probably won't compete for an ACC championship, but they're going to make a couple wins that surprise a lot of people and make you think about where the direction of this program is heading.